No, they'll never take us under, because we're bringing truth like thunder, raining on your speakers like a ton of bricks. Hold the cross.
Welcome back to the Terry and Jesse Show. We're talking about the biggest hoax in our lifetime. You know, Jesse and I smelled a rat when we first got into this Wuhan virus. We did, Jesse. We were like, wait a minute, where's the science? People are making all kinds of conjectures. How do they know? They're just making up things. Come on, stop this. Well, 6 months later, the truth is coming out. I'd like to ask you to listen to this small clip, and then let's get into this article from the Catholic Monitor. Play that clip.
Absolutely. According to a bombshell new report, up to 90% of positive COVID-19 tests in multiple states in our country should have been negative. This report came from the New York Times. That's right, the New York Times. According to the Times, and I quote, "Standard tests are diagnosing huge numbers of people who may be carrying relatively insignificant amounts of the virus and are not likely to be contagious," end quote. Let me repeat that. The vast majority of positive COVID-19 PCR tests in our country are clinically insignificant because the people who popped positive are not likely to be contagious. A PCR test, which is the most common type of COVID-19 test, the kind you're familiar with, identifies the virus's genetic material in a swab sample and then amplifies it over and over again until a machine can detect the DNA of the virus. If the machine detects the virus's DNA, then the test pops positive. But the number of times the genetic material on the swab sample is amplified is hugely important because it correlates to viral load. Amplify the genetic material of the swab sample enough times, you will detect the virus DNA even if the viral load in the person's body is clinically insignificant. Meaning, even if that person only has traces of the virus in their body, even if they're not symptomatic themselves, even if they're very unlikely to be contagious and transmit the virus to other people. So the New York Times examined COVID-19 testing data from New York, Massachusetts, and Nevada, and found, and I quote, up to 90% of people testing positive carried barely any virus, end quote. This is because the PCR tests for COVID-19 in the United States are using anywhere between 35 and 40 amplification cycles to identify the genetic material of the virus. And many experts agree that anything higher than 30 amplification cycles will result in inactive, dead, or clinically insignificant amounts of the virus being detected, therefore causing the test to show up as positive. So why is this important? Because public health policy, the lockdowns, the quarantines, the travel restrictions, businesses closed, gyms shut down, families prohibited from holding funerals, people not allowed to go to church, that is based on the number of COVID-19 cases in our country. Not the COVID-19 death count, not the infection fatality rate, not the hospitalization rate, not the number of ventilators in use, not the ICU bed capacity. No. The COVID-19 public policy in our country is based on COVID case numbers, which means positive COVID-19 tests. And according to the New York Times report, up to 90% of positive COVID-19 tests should be negative.
Wow. Well said, young lady. You know, Jesse, that just shows me
She
again.
She should be on a mainstream channel, Terry.
Yes. Well,
you have to get that type of information on the internet because that just won't be allowed on the mainstream media.
Yeah, because they'll consider that fake news when in fact what they're doing is fake news. Jesse, this COVID case number, this is what they're scaring everybody with. And let's get into this article from the Catholic Monitor because there's a lot of meat here. This is all about bringing out fear to the people in America so that they'll do anything because they're scared to death.
Absolutely. So the actual rates looks much more like a typical season flu. This is what Milo Yiannopoulos writes.
Yeah.
He says, The media was lying and the economy was almost shut down because of false statements.
Yep.
Anthony Fauci, Dr. Anthony, he gave fabricated and highly exaggerated mortality rates related to the coronavirus to persuade President Trump to lock down the entire U.S. economy.
Yep.
Now, this week, the CDC quietly updated the COVID number to admit that only 6%, like that young lady just said, 6% of all the 150,504 deaths recorded actually died from COVID-19. So that's the number is actually 9,210 deaths.
That's right.
Okay, so let's just stop for a minute here.
Good. Let's do that.
So, based on the recommendation of two doctors that are connected with Bill Gates.
Money.
Yep. So, based on the recommendations of these two Bill Gates influenced doctors, the United States shut down the entire U.S. economy based on 9,000 Americans dying entirely by the coronavirus.
Give me a break.
Are you kidding me? The World Health Organization's leaders' coronavirus death rate number of 3.4%, that's what they initially projected, the World Health Organization.
Yep.
It was false. It was false. They're saying, 3.4% of the population are going to die from this COVID-19. It was false.
It was
Their
a
death
lie.
rate
Let's
number-
just use what it said. Jesse, false. That's too nice of a word. It was a lie.
A lie, yeah. So reports have been made that the current death rate of COVID-19, which should be called the communist Wuhan China virus, it was false, it was inaccurate, it was a lie, as the actual rates look much more like a typical seasonal flu. And so the media was lying, and the economy was almost shut down and destroyed because of lies. So who are behind these lies?
That's a good question.
Well, we know the face of these lies is Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx.
Yep.
They're the ones that gave this fabricated and highly exaggerated mortality rates based on this
millions.
Wuhan communist Chinese virus.
2.2 million, they said, Jesse. We're going to be dead from this virus. Are you kidding me? Put more fear into your hearts. Not even close. Go ahead.
So Dr. Tony Fauci and Dr. Deborah Birx, we want to get their first and last name so you know who they are. You know who these liars are.
Yep.
They use the Imperial College model to persuade President Trump, because he's not a doctor. He has to go by the people, he has to go by people that got these PhDs. So they used a false model called the Imperial College model to persuade President Trump to lock down the entire U.S. economy, the economy that he made the greatest economy in 60 years, by the way.
Right. That's right.
So this forged model, called the Imperial College model, predicted 2.2 million American deaths from the communist China Wuhan virus pandemic.
Yep.
And the authors of the Imperial College model, they shared their findings with the White House coronavirus task force in early March. And guess what? Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx met afterwards with President Trump privately and tried to convince him to shut down the U.S. economy.
Yep.
Why? To exterminate the record the Trump economy had basically fashioned up until this point, and they wanted him to shut it down based on this model. But the fact is that Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx were trying to push things around using a lie, and an exaggerated model, almost made the U.S. economy shut down completely, Terry, and almost destroyed this country.
Yeah, see, what we should ask ourselves, what might have been Fauci's motives for promoting this hysteria for the COVID-19? And let's face it, we now know Fauci has a multi-million to billion-dollar big money Bill Gates conflict of interest. What? Remember I said follow the money? Yes, on April 4th, your news, which according to Wikipedia is a weekly BBC News television program, in the article, Anthony Fauci and Birx both have a big money Bill Gates conflict of interest reported. Gates has lots of pull in the medical world. He has a multi-million-dollar relationship with Dr. Anthony Fauci. Just continue. Do I need to say more?
I've always told my wife, who was a retired nurse, I've always said that in the last couple of decades, the medical